Reparations for black people because of slavery. These are in the news at the moment. Many people want them. It's a staggeringly big conflation of two completely separate points. If we look back at history, all groups have been oppressed. Jews have probably been more oppressed than blacks. The vast majority of white people who ever lived in history were serfs. They served a king. They had no rights. They lived short, shitty lives. Every human that's ever existed virtually has lived short, shitty lives. Black people are no different, but they're not really that special. Plenty of groups have had genocides. They've been taken as slaves. 1.5 million white people were taken as slaves by North African Barbary pirates, for example. What we're conflating and what's dangerous with black people is the argument is implied, although I've never heard it directly made, that black people should have reparations because black people are poor now. Black people are poor and badly off today because of slavery. Therefore, black people should have reparations. Other groups like poor white people, or white people aren't poor now. Therefore, we don't have to worry about the history of their oppression. And the history of their oppression is the history of all human oppression, which is virtually all humans throughout history have been oppressed until very recently. But these two things aren't really linked. Black people aren't really poor because of slavery any more than white people are rich because they used to be peasants. These are just unconnected factors. Black people are poor today, relatively speaking, as a group, because they often drop out of school. They're much more often born into single-parent households. Any child of any race born into a single-parent household is orders of magnitude more likely to become a criminal as an adult. Same with kids who drop out of school before 16 or 18. Both of these things are higher in the black community. How is slavery hundreds of years ago relevant to that point? I don't believe it is really. I think the reason black fathers don't stay with the mother of their kids isn't attributable to slavery. That's a cultural phenomenon. It didn't used to happen until a few decades ago. So how is slavery to blame for black fathers staying with the mother until the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then suddenly not staying with the mother? Black fathers used to stay with the mother the same as whites. It's only in the last few decades that that's changed. That's clearly not attributable to slavery, is it? That's a localized phenomenon that's happened at the end of the 20th century that is now causing socioeconomic deprivation of black people. Reasons for that in the first half of the 20th century and before, that was probably down to racism, lack of education, segregation in the southern US, etc. But in this latter 20th century and modern times, if you look at black families who stay together, those black kids do well. They do much, much better than single-parent black kids. And they do much, much better than single-parent kids from any race. So what we're conflating here is, should this group get reparations because this group now is disadvantaged? I don't think these things are connected at all. Jews have, as a group, have been massively screwed over for thousands of years, but they're doing well now. So we wouldn't want to give reparations to Jews. The points that the reparation argument for blacks in the West, the point that it is conflating are, well, blacks are poor now because of slavery. Well, I've just demonstrated that blacks are not poor now because of slavery. These are unconnected things. So really, when you're talking about reparations for black people, actually what you're saying is give poor people shitloads of money. Because I don't believe black poor people are really much worse off than white poor people. So once you say give poor people money, well, that's got nothing to do with the reparations, has it? You're just helping the poor. Well, poor people are already given money to some extent in developed countries. So really all you're saying is increase welfare spending. Or, as more automation comes along, universal basic income. So reparations, there's no logical argument there for reparations. Because you could... Black people aren't poor because of slavery. And how far back do you go? The UK was colonised. Yes, the UK had a vast empire, but it was also colonised by the Romans. It was colonised by the Normans. It was mercilessly attacked by the Vikings. The Anglo-Saxons came to stay and pushed the native population to the fringes of the Great Britain. How far back do we go? Do we go back to the Barbary pirates enslaving 1.5 million white people around the Mediterranean? Do we go back to the Vikings attacking the UK and the Romans attacking the UK? I mean, how far back do we go? The implied reason that most people would go back to black people is because black people are underachieving now. But that isn't because of slavery, as I've just demonstrated. So the whole reparations argument is just really, do we give more free shit to poor people? And that's a conversation to have, especially with the universal basic income. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. I mean, what's the cost-benefit analysis? What is really the problem here? Single-parent families, kids dropping out of school, a lack of male role models for male kids. Because this is primarily a problem with male kids. Male kids need role models. The vast majority of criminals are males. Around 3.5% of the US population commits 50% of the murders. Black men. So to fix that problem, you need male role models. You need to get the father of the kids to stay in the family, or you need to get the woman to abort the kid until she can find a father who's going to stay with the family. This would solve the problem almost entirely. Two-parent families. This is the problem with reparations. What is reparations? Well, it's giving cash to people. If you just give a load of cash to people, they're just going to spend. It's going to wait. Kids don't learn about money management at school. You give a load of cash to people, they're just going to spend it. They're going to buy drugs. They're going to buy alcohol. They're going to go on holiday. They're going to buy a new massive TV. People are not. I mean, on what planet, in what scenario, is giving reparations money to some poor people, or just giving free shit to poor people, which is really what reparations is? It's not going to help anyone. As if the vast majority of people to get this money are going to do wise things with it, like invest it. They just won't, because kids aren't taught that at school, and they should be, but that's an entirely other conversation. But also, why would rich people get reparations? I mean, you're taking money away from poor to middle income white people and giving it to massively rich black people, and so it's ludicrous. There is no coherent argument for reparations. When people are talking about reparations, they don't really mean reparations. They mean giving free shit to poor people. We need to be clear about that. But if we did give a load of free shit to black people for faulty reasons that I've just demonstrated, they're just going to piss that money away anyway. It's not going to help anything. What's going to help is keeping families together. How do you do that? If you really want to solve the problems of poor people, and especially black people, because this happens with them more in the US, how do we keep families together? How do we keep kids in school? These are the things you need to solve. Reparations is not going to solve anything. Giving cash to people isn't really going to solve anything unless they're going to use it wisely. It's the causes for the underachievement of black people that we should be trying to solve, not throwing money at the situation.
This was the Deviant Developer Podcast. Tap subscribe in any podcast app to never miss an episode. To contact me or make a welcome donation, go to thedeviantdeveloper.com.